Hi guys, welcome back. It's Donwozi here, and in today's video I'm bringing you the first ever Paladin PVE Templar DPS build for the Summerset expansion. This will be the first time I have covered the Magicka Templar. So without further ado, I'm going to get into the build. So the stats with just a potion up is 40k Magicka, 17.5k health, 10k stamina, 2,738 spell damage, 66.7% crit, and 904 Magicka recovery. The food we are using is the bi-stat food, the increase max Magicka and max health. The boon we are using is the thief. There are also two options, so I'll get into that a little bit later when I get into the gear. We are a stage 4 vamp, but just remember that you should scale this down in certain fights where, well, especially in trials where it's fire heavy fights. Also, I am a high elf on this build. That's because I didn't want a race change. The optimal race for this build would be dark elf, but dark elf and high elf are, in terms of DPS, very close. Dark elf just beating high elf. I just prefer high elf for the extra recovery because Templars do lack recovery. Even though we have quite a few sources of recovery, they're still lacking a bit of recovery from what I have like tested. So now I'm going to go over the gear. As you can see, we have 5 Julianos on the front bar with a infused Julianos Inferno staff with a shock damage enchant. On the front bar. On the back bar, we are using a Maelstrom Inferno staff with the Berserker enchant. If you do not have or do not want to use a Maelstrom staff, you can just use a second Julianos staff infused with a Berserker enchant. And make sure it's a flame staff though. Also, even without a Maelstrom staff, this build can hit above 40k, and it's real good trial DPS even without a Maelstrom staff. So that's entirely up to you. If you don't have a Maelstrom staff, this build will still work for you. I just feature a Maelstrom staff on my build because I have one, but I do try to make builds that do not necessarily need Maelstrom equipment or trials gear. So we are running 5 Julianos, 5 burning Spellweave, and 2 Zans. If you cannot get Zans because Scalecaller is a particularly hard dungeon, then I would suggest Valkyn Scoria. But also, if you're running Valkyn Scoria, then I would suggest changing your food to the Witch Mother's Brew, because then you can use Witch Mother's Brew and have a decent enough of a health pool. Or Clockwork Citrus Fillet is entirely up to you. But as of right now, with this build, I'm using the bi-stat food for more damage. Also, we are using Essence of Spell Power, because I seemingly forgot to go over that. So we have on the head and shoulders, we have Zans, 1 medium, 1 heavy, and then we have a jerkin of Julianos, so chest piece. We have a belt of Julianos, gloves of Burning Spellweave, breeches of Julianos, feet of Burning Spellweave, and 3 Burning Spellweave jewelry. So the way I'm going with this build is I will want to have the big pieces infused, so the legs, the chest, and the mask, but I don't have the transmute crystals to transmute this Zan's mask to infuse just yet. But that is the route I will be going. So in terms of the Mundus, from what I've tested, and this is just strictly on dummies, so it might not be like set in stone right, it might not be the absolute correct information, but from what I've tested, the thief is better if you're running 2 infused or more. But if you're not and you're running full divines, then the apprentice is better. But what I've come to realise is, if you are running 3 infused with the thief, that is better than running full divines with the apprentice. So just keep that in mind. If you don't want to transmute and you want to keep all divines, then stick with the apprentice. If you can afford to transmute your 3 big pieces, then go with the thief. And on the jewellery we are running 1 Bloodthirsty and 2 Arcane. So I'll go over this when I get to the skills, but if basically from what I tested, and like I said, don't take my word as gold. This is just from what I've tested. Other people may have different results. So basically, Arcane, 3 Arcane tested better without an execute. But I wanted to use Radiant Oppression because I really like the skill. It's a personal preference. And 1 Bloodthirsty was better when I slotted Radiant Oppression. So just keep that in mind. So it's either 3 Arcane or 2 Arcane, 1 Bloodthirsty, depending on if you're running Radiant Oppression or not. So that is the gear. If you have any questions and I've missed anything out, just hit me up in the comments. So now we're going to go over the skills. On the front bar we have Blazing Spear. For our spammable we have Elemental Weapon. And I just want to go over the passives right quick. I mean, I'm going to tell people what passives to use, but I just want to go over the passives. The reason Elemental Weapon is so OP and so strong is because every time you cast it, it has a chance to apply Burning, Concussion or Chilled Elemental Status effect. Only 1 though, not all 3. Not all 3 at one time. Also, the passives are absolutely awesome. So it is the cheapest spammable of everything. Spell Orb. This also gives you an extra 4k magic damage. Concentrated Barrier. That's when you're blocking. But this one is the most important for me. While you are casting Channeling a Sigicorda ability, you gain Major Protection, reducing your damage taken by 30%. So while you are casting Elemental Weapon, your damage taken is reduced by 30%, and I think that's absolutely too good to pass up. So next on our bar is Radiant Oppression. This is our execute, as we all know. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm not well known for my Templar builds just yet, because this is my first Templar build. The next skill on our bar is Purifying Light. Basically what this does is when you cast it, for the duration after, it adds up all your damage up to 24,510 for me, and then it blasts and then it blows up for that amount. Obviously it cannot crit, so what you see is what you get. I think it's flat damage. And the next skill on our bar is Inner Light, and then the ultimate on our bar is Fiery Rage. On our back bar we have Blockade of Fire, Vampire's Bane. The reason we have Vampire's Bane is, in my opinion, to alleviate the sustain issues you have. So you don't need to cast this every rotation, you can cast it every 2 rotations. Same with the next skill, Channel Focus. This is to help you sustain and give you some resistances. Basically I cast this every 2 rotations as well, but I'll cast it in conjunction to Vampire's Bane. So I mean, not in conjunction, I'll cast it, so 1 rotation I'll cast Vampire's Bane, 1 rotation I'll cast Channel Focus, and so on and so forth, so I can easily keep track of them. Next skill on our bar is Harness Magicka. This is our damage shield, and you can either take this one or the other morph to give you a bigger damage shield. I just prefer this one now, especially on the Templar, because it gives you a lot more sustain when you're getting hit by like Magicka projectiles and stuff. And the next skill on our bar is Channeled Acceleration. Now if you are in melee range, or if you can get in melee range, then I would suggest using Trap Beast, because it does do a little bit of damage. Even though it's physical damage, it still does damage. Sorry about that. In short fights, this one would be better because you don't have to recast it as often. So just keep that in mind. And the ultimate on our back bar is Shooting Star. So now I'm going to go over some passives. Well, I'm going to go over the passives. So if you want to skip this bit, I will have a table of contents in the description as soon as possible. So you want to take all the Aedric Spear passives. Well, the most important ones are Piercing Spear for extra, increases your critical damage by 10% and increases your damage done to blocking targets by 10%. Second bit is not a big deal. Spear Wall increases the amount of damage you block from melee attacks by 15%. Now, this one is not that vital, so if you don't have many skill points, then I would suggest not taking this. Obviously, take Piercing Spear. Burning Light is a big one. You really want to take this. It accounts for a lot of your damage. This one also is not a big deal. Balanced Warrior. It just gives you 6%. I mean, it just gives you extra spell resistance up to 2,640. Depending on how many skills you have on the bar, I think. Or it might just be a flat value. But that one's not that important. Enduring Rays. This is somewhat important if you're using any of them skills. So, Vampire's Bane, that will get affected by that, I'm pretty sure. Prism, this one is very useful, so I would suggest getting this. Casting a Dawn's Wrath ability generates 3 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. So you get ultimate every time you cast Purifying Light, or Vampire's Bane, or Radiant Oppression. Obviously it has a 3-second cooldown, so... Illuminate, I would highly suggest taking this. Casting a Dawn's Wrath ability grants minor sorcery to you and your group for 20 seconds, increasing their spell damage by 5%. So a bit of group utility in this passive, so I would suggest taking this. And also, this one also reduces the magic and stamina and ultimate costs of your abilities by 4%. Another one that helps with sustain. Now this tree is not too useful because it's all to do with healing. You don't really need to take hardly any. The Master Ritualist, that is the only one I would suggest taking, just in case you need to res people a lot faster. But as for Mending, Sacred Ground and Lightweaver, you don't necessarily need them. They are useful, but you don't necessarily need them. So if you're running low on skill points, then I would suggest not taking them. So in the Destruction Staff, I would suggest taking all the passives because they're all useful. All the light armor passives. The Windwalker passive in medium armor for some extra stam recovery. Stam is always good. Extra stam recovery is always good for more blocking, more roll dodging and stuff like that. In the heavy armor skill line, I suggest taking Resolve, Constitution and Juggernaut. If you're running low on skill points again, I would suggest just taking Juggernaut for the extra 2% max health. In Vampire, if you are a Vampire, I would suggest taking Supernatural Recovery, Undeath and Unnatural Resistances. The main two in this are Undeath and Supernatural Recovery for extra Magicka recovery and extra damage mitigation when you're below 33%, or when you're below 50%, should I say. In the Fighters Guild, if you're going to use Rearming Trap, I would suggest taking the Intimidating Presence because it reduces the stamp cost of your Fighters Guild abilities by 15%. Banish the Wicked, I'd take this regardless, even if you don't have any Fighters Guild abilities slotted, because it helps with your ultimate regeneration. Skill Tracker, this is also, you don't really need this because you don't do much damage with it, so it's entirely up to you. It's just if you have extra skill points. In the Mages Guild, I would suggest taking Magicka Controller, because the rest do not apply to the only skill we will be casting, which is Shooting Star. In a light, we don't cast it no more because they changed the way the empower works, and it only empowers your next light attack, so it just makes it not worth it, especially on this build. So Magicka Controller would be the only one I'd take. You could take Might of the Guild if you wanted to, just for one extra damage on your next light attack after you cast the Shooting Star, but it's not that big of a deal. Take all the Sigic Order passives, both of the Undaunted passives, all of your class passives, and last but not least the Medicinal Use passive in Alchemy, which gives you basically 100% uptime of the effects of potions. So that is the skills. Now I'm going to go over the champion points. So we have, in the Thief, we have 40 into Warlord, 100 into Arcanist, and 56 into Tenacity, 40 into Tumbling, and 14 into Shadow Ward. If you want, you can take points out of Arcanist. I just didn't see any other point in putting them anywhere else, because even the extra 1% you get for the 25 points is a lot more helpful on the Templar. just because of the sustain issues the Templar has. So in the next skill tree we have 28 points into Bastion, 56 into Elemental Defender and Hardy, and 34 into Thick Skin, 61 in Ironclad, and 15 into Spell Shield. Like I've said in previous videos, the red and the green trees are personal preference, or depending on what you need to use in a certain trial. So just pay attention to what trial you're going in, what damage you're going to be taking, etc. and adjust these trees accordingly. The next tree is more set in stone. These are the champion points that work best for me. So we have 56 into Thaumaturge, 56 into Master at Arms, 8 into Staff Expert, 52 into Elfborn, 56 into Elemental Expert, and 22 into Spell Erosion. Always keep attention, like pay attention to what the players in your group are wearing. So if they're wearing Alcaution, Taurugs, Infused Crushers and stuff like that, always pay attention to the spell penetration or physical penetration, just to make sure you're not over penetrating the targets. And then you can adjust the spell erosion tree accordingly. So that's it for the CP. Now I'm going to go over the rotation. I'm just going to put my food back on. So what I would generally do is, to start off the rotation, I would start with a potion, used channeled acceleration, then I would use channel focus just to get it all going, start my buffs up. So I'll start that again. That'll be potion, channeled acceleration, channel focus, swap bars, and then I would use my Destra ult, and then straight after my Destra ult I would light attack Purifying Light, light attack Blazing Spear, swap bars, and then light attack Blockade, light attack Vampire's Bane, swap back, and then I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would use 4 elemental weapons while my Destra ult is active. When it is not active, then I would suggest only using 3. So obviously we'll start that again. So it would be potion, channeled acceleration, channel focus, swap bars, ultimate, light attack Purifying Light, light attack Blazing Spear, light attack Blockade, light attack Bane, swap bars, 1, 2, 3, 4, light attack Purifying Light, light attack Blazing Spear, swap bars, light attack Elemental Blockade, and then swap back, because you do not need to use Vampire's Bane every rotation. Whenever channel focus drops off, I would suggest putting it in with your Blockade. So I'll do the rotation now. I'll just wait for the potion to cool down. So it would be potion, acceleration, focus, ulti, Purifying Light, Blazing Spear, swap bars, Blockade, Vampire's Bane, 1, 2, 3, 4, Purifying Light, Blazing Spear, Blockade, channel focus, 1, 2, 3, and same again, but Vampire's Bane this time because it's the second time round. Same again, channel focus this time, 1, 2, 3, and obviously I ain't got elemental drain up or anything like that, so my sustain is poo. But yeah, that is the rotation. And then when you get to round about 20% or 20 to 15% health, then I would replace elemental weapon with Radiant Destruction. So it would be, so say I'm round about 20% health right now, it would be Purifying Light, Blazing Spear, Blockade, Vampire's Bane, Radiant Oppression, and then again, but then I'd miss out Vampire's Bane, just do Blockade and swap back. Same again, I did that wrong, but put Vampire's Bane back up this time. And then when you get to about 6% health, just spam Radiant Oppression for the win. and that is the rotation. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. If you like the build, please leave a like, share the content, and also, if, like I say in every video, if you need to contact me personally and ask some private questions about the builds or anything like that, hit me up on Discord. The Discord link will be in the description, as will my Facebook, Twitter, and my Twitch, because I will eventually come back to streaming and be streaming on Twitch eventually. I'm still going to stream on YouTube in the near future, but I will eventually switch to Twitch. So please let me know what you think of my first Templar build. If you have any comments on the build, anything that you could advise me on, then please let me know. Please leave it in the comments. I always like to hear constructive criticism, not just someone coming on and bashing my build. At least give me tips. Give me tips to be helpful. Don't be a douchebag and say, oh, well, you're crap because you haven't done this. Do you know, be a nice person, because I do accept constructive criticism. I don't accept people being arseholes, per se. So anyways, thanks guys. Thanks for watching the content, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks guys. Bye.